Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of IHL in Film. I'm your host, Uwais Anwar, and I have with us our resident IHL expert, Aisha Malik, who is team lead of the Conflict Law Center here at RSIL, as well as editor-in-chief of our DLP forum. Welcome to the show, Aisha.
Thanks.
Aisha, so we're looking at a very interesting concept today, and I wanted essentially the concept of scorched earth.
Yeah.
And I wanted to use, a classic movie to really illustrate this point. So we're looking at Thor Ragnarok, which again is an Avengers movie. And this is a particular scene on, the destruction of his home world. We'll get into it in a little more detail in a bit. But let's just look at the clip and see, what are some of the IHL principles that we can really get out from this.
Sounds good.
With the eternal flame, you are reborn.
Enough! You want Asgard? It's yours.
Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. You can't defeat me.
No, I know. But he can.
The people are safe. It's all that matters.
We're fulfilling the prophecy.
I hate this prophecy.
So do I, but we have no choice. Surtur destroys Asgard, he destroys Hela so that our people may live. But we need to let him finish the job, otherwise...
It's my favorite part.
Don't stop, you moron! Hulk, stop! Just for once in your life, don't smash! Big monster!
Let's go!
Okay.
All right. On that note, let's get to analyzing this.
Yeah.
Something. I mean, just to give a bit of background here, what we're essentially seeing here is that Thor's evil sister Hela, she comes back from wherever she's imprisoned, and she wants to take over Asgard, their home world. And the only way for Thor and Loki to defend that is to basically unleash this monster, which is fulfilling a prophecy of the destruction of Asgard. So by destroying Asgard, this monster will also destroy, this demon will also destroy Hela, and that's how they, evacuate their people and free their people.
Right.
So it's essentially a policy of scorched earth.
A literal
Exactly.
scorched earth
And
there.
they've used that fire creature as well there. So Aisha, I wanted to ask you, first of all, what is scorched earth?
Yeah.
I mean, how would we define it, and is it permitted under IHL?
Yeah, so scorched earth is kind of a tactic of devastating the land to prevent the other state from using its resources. And we've seen it being used throughout the times during an armed conflict. So in ancient times, they actually used to salt the earth so that residents couldn't use it and they couldn't, grow any crops or anything like that from it. And then we saw it being used by Germany in the American Civil War. General Sherman used it in Georgia by obliterating homes, killing people, destroying roads, etc. And that actually was part of the backdrop for Gone with the Wind. But we had to watch Thor Ragnarok, obviously.
They're both classics.
Totally. And so we've had also a history of forces destroying dams and flooding their land. So in 1938, you had the Chinese armed forces destroying a dam in their own territory to stop the invasion of Japanese forces, and they destroyed millions of acres of farmland. They killed thousands of people, but they did that to stop the invasion of the army.
Absolutely.
And so retreating forces do that very often. In terms of what IHL says about this, under Article 54 of Additional Protocol 1, it bans the use of scorched earth policies, but at the same time, it does allow for them in territory under your control for the purposes of military necessity.
So you can't do these on the enemy's territory. You can only do this on your own territory.
You can do it on your own territory.
Yeah.
Yes. A territory under your effective control, you can do it for purposes of military necessity. And it was just kind of acknowledging that states wanted this in. And it was actually states who were really like, we want this in because we understand that when we're retreating, we want to, destroy this and not let that state
And
use
I would assume, having that level of freedom when it comes to military operations on your own territory to thwart invasions or things like that. So that's a really important point. I mean, some of the things that we look at this is, the prohibition in Article 54 on, the starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, and then, destroying objects and which are indispensable to the survival of the civilian population. And then this becomes an exception to that.
Yes.
There's a general prohibition, and then you can, if requirements of military necessity, on territory which is under your control.
Yeah.
Now that brings up a really interesting point, because occupied territory is technically under your effective control. In fact, that is the definition, part of the definition of an occupation. It's under your effective control. Would you also be permitted to conduct these things? Because we know that, Fourth Geneva Convention has a bunch of provisions, very detailed provisions on what an occupying power can or cannot do.
Yeah, so there is an exemption for occupied territory. So in occupied territory, they're like, you can't do this there. You can't destroy objects which are indispensable for the civilian population. And by that, we mean foodstuffs. We mean crops which are ripe for harvesting. We mean water, drinking water reservoirs. Those you can't destroy. They're like, you can do it on your own territory. You can do these scorched earth tactics, but not on occupied territory, which kind of like accords with what we understand about occupied territory, that it's not your own territory. You're just a usufruct. You're just administrating it. In the meanwhile, so it doesn't transfer that title. So it makes sense that you're not allowed to do it there.
No, that's very interesting. Another aspect that I wanted to look at, and this is really about the development of IHL as well, is when you're undertaking scorched earth policies, you're also, the biggest harm that is being made is to the environment, is to the natural resources, to nature itself. So do we have restrictions in IHL for this type of violence against nature?
Yeah, so you have environmental protections that you're not allowed to destroy, damage the environment. The problem is that they're very, very high. The threshold is widespread, long term, and by long term we mean decades long term, right? So it's incredibly high. At the same time, you also have the NMOD Convention, which is about you can't weaponize the environment to cause damage, and so we saw that particularly used in Vietnam, where they used Agent Orange to defoliate the place, all of the forests in Vietnam.
Absolutely.
So we do have environmental law applying, but in terms of it applying to your own territory, international environmental law, I know that we have an acceptance that human rights law applies during an armed conflict. We haven't seen the kind of jurisprudence coming out about environmental law, so that I think the law there is still in a bit of a state of flux.
Okay, well, brilliant. Actually, I think we have covered a lot of material. I don't want this video to go too long, but this was really interesting, and stay tuned for the next ones. Also, remember, if we've missed anything, for example, destroying a bridge, especially when that was the only way to get out of Asgard. So that's the point. You have to be careful when destroying bridges. So anything that we've missed, we'd love to hear from you in the comments, or just write to us, and we'll try to address it in probably some of the other videos that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.